I wore short shorts the other day to church.
Hoochie daddy shorts in the church is...
I did.
Okay.
It's actually a shame that spirituality has been used as a tool to control and manipulate. Who gets a lot of free passes in religious traditions when it comes to sexuality? Do folks that have healthy relationships to their diverse bodies have space front and center in your religious communities? Religious communities need to acknowledge that their members have physical bodies and they will have sex and they will have sexual desires and attractions. They have an intellect, they have a brain, that they have a body, but they also have this thing called spirit.
Welcome to another episode of Keep On Loving, the podcast. I'm your host, Mystkue Woods, and to my left, I have my lovely co-host, Harlan Shaw.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Harlan. We are excited to have you here today. And then we have a special guest host today who I love to call Rev. Welcome, Rev. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. So today our title is Sex, God, and Seroconversion. Spirituality, Shame, and Sacred Sexuality. So let's get into it. Before we get into that, Rev, tell us how long have you been a reverend? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started as a minister in 2012 as a solo minister. Before that, I was a student pastor and did lay leadership in churches before that, but as a clergy person since 2012.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So you've been doing this
around the block a few times.
All right. I'm not mad at it. All right. So let's check in. So our first question that we have for you is, how might a client's relationship with God or spirituality influence their sexual health decisions and sense of self-worth after any diagnosis?
It's actually a shame that spirituality has been used as a tool to control and manipulate people's sexuality and desire, self-determination. So I believe there's a great deal of influence how one is raised spiritually and religiously, in how they relate to their bodies and their sexuality and their attraction. So if the narrative is that you are an embodiment of original sin, that your body is sinful, that any desires your body have is sinful, one, may end up with a very toxic, very unhealthy relationship to one's body. And that can go, towards hedonism of just, well, if this body is sinful, but it's what I got, so I'm just gonna use it up and trash it up. Or these awful notions of purity and the purity culture, and how so many faith traditions, and I will speak from primarily the Christian tradition, which is the one I'm trained in. But now, as a Unitarian Universalist, I am spending some time studying even Buddhism, and other mystical traditions. It is found in so many faith traditions, but it is found there to control bodies. And my own take is that it's not in the roots of those religious traditions. It's when colonialism took over the religious tradition, and the colonialism, it's an empire and it's patriarchy, right? Because who gets a lot of free passes in religious traditions when it comes to sexuality?
People are in power, right?
The ones on the top of the, the heterosexual male, most often, white, that gets to control everybody's bodies and desires, and gets great privilege and advantages for these narratives of, well, no, you have to reserve your sexuality only for reprocreation, in the parameters that we want it to happen.
Yeah, it's a sticky agenda.
It is.
It's very sticky. And I find that oftentimes when they are perpetuating whatever it is that they're trying to get across, whatever portion of the agenda, they always leave out the conversation around what could potentially come up. And that includes, transmission of diseases, viruses, all of the things, or even just general mental health around how to navigate managing dealing with someone or people or whatever the case may be. So I think that's interesting. Harlan, what do you think?
You said a lot of things, but I'm going to go on to the next question too. And what advice would you give providers to help clients navigate their spirituality and conflicts that they have with their sex and sexuality?
I think the first step is acknowledging that many clients will show up with some religious formation, some spiritual beliefs. So to just open up that door and inquire, as you would inquire about other aspects of that person's life, right? What they do for work, the relationship to their families, their diets, all the questions that health providers ask. Asking questions about people's spiritual beliefs are really informative because many of their decisions will be based on those beliefs. And many of the ways to navigate anxiety and fears could be informed by those belief systems as well. So just the providers asking and acknowledging that many will show up, understanding that they have an intellect, they have a brain, that they have a body, but they also have this thing called spirit or soul.
There may be some providers that are uncomfortable or uneasy with asking religious questions. How would you tell them to go about approaching that, or how do you make them, or what advice would you give them to make them feel comfortable, a little bit more comfortable doing so?
Okay, I'll see if I can.
I know it's a hard question.
It is. It's a very hard question. But my instinct is to say, well, if you are uncomfortable, just like you might be uncomfortable about asking the particularities of people's sexual practices, if you are uncomfortable about faith in general or religion or spirituality in general, as a professional, be aware of your discomfort and push beyond it. Because it's not about your discomfort. You're there to help people, and I trust all these providers are there to support people. So if you know that the subject matter will help those individuals, just opening it up, and you don't have to be an expert, because I worked as a chaplain in hospitals, and I never pretended to be a medical professional. I was always showing up, even though I would wear the white,
the lab coat,
the lab coat and all, but I would be very clear that I'm showing up in the capacity of a religious professional. So yeah, be very clear you're showing up in the capacity of medical professional, but you're acknowledging that there are other aspects of these persons' lives and hearing, because a client may say, well, I end up, never taking care of my sexual health because it was always pushed to the underground. I couldn't really talk about it, or was never allowed to discuss it or to educate myself about it. So yeah, you're uncomfortable about talking about religion. It's okay. Yeah. It is a sticky subject, but open up that door. One question, right?
Okay. And what ways do you think that religious or spiritual institutions could work more intentionally with healthcare providers or the health system?
Yes, I feel very privileged that I've been serving with the Unitarian Universalists that in the 60s realized that sex ed was not happening in public education. It was not happening at home. So they developed a curriculum called Our Whole Lives. So religious communities need to acknowledge that their members have physical bodies and they will have sex and they will have sexual desires and attractions. So if you're not educating people and encouraging them to talk about it, to seek information about it, to have a healthy relationship to that aspect of their humanity, they're part of the problem. So if the religious organizations are not actively doing their part, they're actively being part of the problem. And pandemics, just yesterday I learned about a huge outbreak of HIV in my home country in Brazil, among 13 years old to 18 and 19 years of age. So where are all the religious organizations?
Right.
But if their rhetoric is you cannot have any sex, it's abstinence only, and sex is shameful, you're doing a disfavor.
I agree completely.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode and you are a Philadelphia resident and you need resources about your sexual and reproductive health, visit www.phillykeeponloving.com. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up this idea of individuals as well as organizations meeting each other like at a meeting point. Something that comes up for me is thinking about how do you navigate clients or patients who have been kind of stricken, or like they grew up in the church, and so they have always been kind of Bible thumping, if you will, and now they have been shamed out, whether they have been a victim of sexual assault or they have just had other experiences where they have just explored in general. And so what does reclaiming pleasure and their dignity and then also their spiritual wholeness look like in their sexual lives, but also within the church?
That's another tough one, because there are not many churches out there that will publicly, overtly talk about sexuality, period, let alone have programs, educational programs, or meetups that people would sit around and talk about pleasure, about
but there's so many ways we can talk about pleasure without talking about sexual pleasure, like pleasure in general. So I think in my experience, I feel like, why can't we have just general conversation about the topics itself, and then it can still lend to talking about sexual pleasure, but pleasure can be the fact that I like to come to service every Sunday or whatever the case may be, and grow from there. Like there has to be a starting point.
Yeah, the joy resistance movement, or the NAP ministries, all these ministries, they're reclaiming humanity and countering hundreds of years of purity culture and toxic theology. So joy, and dance. Just this Sunday from the pulpit, I mentioned that I did a lot of dancing this last month, and it is one universal way humans actually have evolved through expressing one's feelings and connecting with one another. It's so cathartic that dancing is a very, I think, great example of what you're talking about, right? But so many religious traditions have moved towards, you just sit still and don't even move, let alone, swaying.
Right.
And that's where racism is found once again. That there's all the notions about sensuality and movement that that's evil, right? That's dark continents. That's brown people, black people thing. Religious folk need to focus, on this sanctity, right?
Purity, Wow. It's a lot to unfold right there.
Sorry.
No.
Doors, many doors.
Right.
Yes.
This is only part one. Remember that.
Yeah.
There will be a part two.
Okay. So let's take it back to shame and stigma, like how can the church or any spiritual or religious group help eliminate some stigma or shame around for people who are living with HIV?
So the religious groups, the religious professionals in particular, and leaders. I wore short shorts the other day to church.
Hoochie daddy shorts in the church
I did.
Okay.
Granted, I wasn't preaching. I was, but even still, I think if religious professionals want the communities to be healthy, and sexual health is critical, they need to model sexual health and a relationship to their own body that is not around shame.
That's sex education 101.
Right? So ministers, you don't have to show up wearing, a tie and a suit and cover everything up. Not that, modesty is a bad thing. I believe in modesty, head covering, all of it, especially if it's part of your culture, part of your religious tradition. And at the same time, religious professionals and leaders and members of communities of faith need to be a little more open about, their own relationship to the body, right? Fat phobia is horrendous. Are we talking about it? And are we making space and room for it? Do folks that have healthy relationships to their diverse bodies have space front and center in your religious communities?
Okay. I agree. I'll pass it back to you, Mystique.
Yeah, so when we speak about spiritual shame and the transformation, moving back into self-confidence and self-compassion, what are some tips that you would give to individuals who may have been recently diagnosed with HIV or any long-term illness, and how to stay positive?
Yeah. For me, community, right? Find people that might be within that social location that you find yourself in, right? Find other people that have similar diagnosis or same diagnosis, that have found ways to navigate those waters. Learn from them, partner with them, because that's how I learn, right? My journey of liberation and of health is relational. Like self-help books and gurus, I'm sorry, they're out to make money. Relationships. Who are the people that are going through what you're going, or they can listen to you and journey with you empathically, as opposed to being stuck in those communities of folks that are not talking about your reality, folks that are not taking care of all aspects of their humanity. Find your people and join those individuals in their practices, right? Meet up with those folks for a walk along the river, for coffee, for some gentle yoga practices. There's some wonderful studios in West Philly, BIPOC owned and operated spaces, right? Find those folks that are taking good care of themselves, and doing it collectively, because it's impossible to do it alone, according to my understanding.
Understood.
Community is a very important part of health, like having community. So I agree completely with that.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts right now, actually.
Ooh,
but I can't share all of them right now on camera. But I want to thank you, Rev, for giving us this time and answering our questions. It was a pleasure meeting with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work that you do. It saves lives. It's critical, right? It brings people out of a lot of challenging mental spaces, spiritual spaces, and physical spaces.
Keeps them out of those dark places. Yeah, for sure.
All right, folks. So as I said before, this is only part 1 of the conversation. Tune into our next episode of Keep On Loving the podcast. And as always, no matter how you're loving,
you're going to keep on
loving.
Just keep